The Continental Football League has been revived, and with the unveiling of their final 3 brand new teams and a league-wide schedule release, it looks like it's full steam ahead for the startup summer league. Howdy, I'm Logan with Alt Football Archive, and today we're breaking down all the latest information you need to know about the Continental Football League, also called the CoFL. The league revealed 3 brand new teams: the Michigan Arrows, the Indianapolis Capitals, also called the Caps, and the Fort Worth Braves. Breaking it down, let's start with the Michigan Arrows. They were an original CoFL team back from the 1960s, and I think their logo is a lot of fun. The logo depicts a flint arrowhead with the shape of Michigan at the base of the arrow acting as the binding. The shape of the arrow, of course, at the top creates an A, which is used in the name Arrows. It's a fun design that's a little bit different than traditional football logos, and I don't really know exactly what the budget is going to be when it comes to uniforms, but I do think it would be really cool to see the team lean in and use a design that might be similar to what Florida State rocks in college football, with an arrow running down the side of the helmet rather than just the logo slapped on the side. But whatever it is, it seems like this logo is very distinctive and I do like it a lot. And from the logo, it seems like that the team's colors will be white, gray, and green. In the past iteration of the CoFL, the Michigan Arrows were based in Detroit, and with the Michigan Panthers of the UFL leaving, it seems like they might be able to fill in where Panthers fans might feel left out after relocation in the UFL. The UFL also already features a team based in San Antonio and the San Antonio Toros, so it'd be very interesting to see if the CoFL is planning on leveraging UFL relocation to try to build up fan support. Next, we'll talk about a fellow Northern Division rival, the Indianapolis Capitals. The Caps were an original CoFL team based back in the 1960s, and I think this is interesting as Indianapolis isn't really a city that's commonly looked at in alternative football because of the Colts' presence there from the NFL. The logo for the Caps is a modernized version of the original logo seen in the 1960s, this time just being a stylized and angular red C that ends in a star. To me, this logo kind of reminds me of the Cleveland Cavaliers logo from the NBA, and it seems like that the team's colors will be red, white, and yellow, based from the logo. The final team that was announced to round out all 8 teams for the upcoming season is the Fort Worth Braves. Like the Arrows and the Caps, the Fort Worth Braves are also a CoFL team dating back to the 1960s. The team is going to be based in Fort Worth, and for those who are in Texas aren't familiar, Fort Worth is the FW in the DFW area around Dallas. It's a little bit west, and I could see the city potentially showing a lot of interest in them, kind of like how we saw Arlington cut a deal with the UFL to have the Dallas Renegades renamed to the Arlington Renegades in 2023. Interestingly, the Fort Worth Braves logo features a horse with Native American-style feathering down its mane, with the base of the neck forming almost what looks like the bottom outline of the state of Texas. Having the feather imagery is an interesting nod given that the Michigan Arrows also featured this similar design in their logo, and they obviously owe their name to the arrowheads that Native Americans made and left behind. And of course, for the Fort Worth Braves, the name itself, like the Atlanta Braves of the MLB, the Fort Worth Braves doesn't relate to a specific Native American group, but instead is a historical term used to refer to Native American warriors. Looking at the logo, it seems like the team's colors will be dark green, light green, and white. This, of course, is very similar to the style of the Louisville Kings from the UFL, with the same colors and the same horse mascot, it seems like. Now, I don't think that the Continental Football League was copying the UFL whenever they created this. I just think it's funny that 2 different leagues would come up with basically the same kind of crazy styling for one team based in Kentucky and another one based in Texas. Maybe it's a new fad, maybe it's something I don't know about when it comes to marketing or sports league, but I think it's just a very funny coincidence, and it seems like neon green is just something that's going to stick around when it comes to alternative football. After going over all 3 of the final new teams, let's do a recap of all 8 teams. Starting off with the Northern Division, we have the Indianapolis Caps and the Michigan Arrows, which we just covered, as well as the Ohio Valley Ironmen and the Cincinnati Dukes. Looking in detail at the Indianapolis Caps, they're going to be playing in Indianapolis based on the name, but given on how recently they were announced, we don't have a lot of news on which stadium they'll be playing in. But very importantly, they will be led by head coach Hal Mooney. He's a big name in football as one of the creators of the air raid offense, and for those of you who are paying attention to the spring football in 2020, you might recognize him as the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Renegades of the XFL under legendary head coach Bob Stoops. The Michigan Arrows, like the Caps, we don't have a lot of information since they were just revealed so recently. I do know that the previous iteration of the Arrows that played in the 1960s did play in Detroit, but we don't know quite yet where they'll play. I know the UFL had issues when it came to finding a stadium, so it could be that the Michigan Arrows might play a little bit outside of Detroit, but they will be led by head coach Steve Kaiser. Next is the Ohio Valley Ironmen, which date back to the original 1960s iteration of the Continental Football League. The Ohio Valley Ironmen are a very important team in the Continental Football League, as the leadership of the Ironmen really helped put the entire league together after the collapse of the IFA in 2025. Despite the name of Ohio Valley Ironmen, they will be playing their games in West Virginia at Monarch Stadium in Moundsville, near Wheeling, West Virginia. Monarch Stadium has a capacity of 5,200, and they'll be led by head coach Manny Matsakis. The next team to discuss in the Northern Division is the Cincinnati Dukes. They're going to be an interesting franchise to follow, as they used to be a semi-pro team that is now moving up to the professional level by joining the CoFL. The team, based off of their name, will be based in Cincinnati, Ohio, playing their games at Mount Healthy Stadium, which has a capacity of 3,278, and they're led by head coach Daryl Moore. Next, when breaking down the teams in the Southern Division, I do think it's very interesting, like I talked about last time in my previous CoFL video, is that all the teams in the Southern Division will be from Texas. So it makes the Southern Division really just a Texas division, and we'll talk about this later when it comes down to scheduling and games, but I just think it's very fun. As a Texan, I find it very interesting, and it will certainly help when it comes to travel costs. Anyways, the Fort Worth Braves, like some of the other teams, were ones that we already talked about. Since they're so new, being the most recent and final team that was revealed, we don't know exactly what stadium they're going to be calling home. We do know that it will be somewhere in the DFW area. And the league announced, as I'm recording this episode, that Ruben Duck Contreras will be the Braves head coach for 2026. Another team in the Southern Division will be the San Antonio Toros. The Toros were an original CoFL team back in the 1960s, and this iteration will be playing in the Gale and Tom Benson Stadium in San Antonio, where the University of Incarnate Word plays their football games. The stadium has a capacity of 6,000, and they'll be led by head coach Stan Bedwell. The next team to discuss in the Southern Division will be the Texas Syndicate. This is a brand new team and a brand new identity based in the Austin, Round Rock area. They'll be playing their games at The Field in Pflugerville, which is about 30 minutes north of Austin and has a seating capacity of 10,000. Just so you guys know, the high school stadiums in Texas get huge. Just with this being, I think, the second largest stadium that we know of so far in the CoFL. The Texas Syndicate will be led by head coach James Champagne. The final team to round out the Southern Division is the Tall City Black Gold. The Black Gold are a brand new team, although the league website does cite the legacy of an original Continental Football League team back from the 1960s, the Odessa Midland Roughnecks. Rough 'em up Roughnecks. I know it's not the same team, but it's fun to see. It is spelled a little bit differently. I'll probably try to show that on screen. The Tall City Black Gold will be playing in Midland, Texas at Astound Broadband Stadium, which features the largest capacity in the CoFL, holding a maximum of 15,000 fans. Not only did the CoFL reveal the final 3 teams, they also revealed a league-wide schedule for all 8 franchises. One of the most interesting aspects that I think jumps out to anyone that looks at it right off the bat is that this schedule will be highly regionalized, with conference play during the season only consisting of regional rivals. This obviously is made to save money on trips, as both conferences you can see on a league map that was shared recently by the San Antonio Toros owner shows all of the teams very closely bound together based on the division that they're in. I think this is an interesting decision since it'll make, at least in the first year of the league, divisions feel almost like separate leagues, kind of like how the AFL teams and NFL teams only played against each other before they faced off against each other in the Super Bowl before both of those leagues merged to create the modern NFL. If the league is able to be successful and grow, I do wonder if this will be kept or if we'll see a more traditional style of scheduling where all 8 teams play against each other. For each team, the season consists of 6 games with 1 preseason game against a non-Continental Football League-based team. Preseason games will take place a week before the start of the season, and they'll be likely playing against semi-pro teams, kind of like what the Cincinnati Dukes were before joining. I don't think we'll ever see them play against a Canadian Football League team or a United Football League team, unfortunately, but I do expect that this is a game that will be set to kind of get everything figured out. This is kind of like the dress rehearsal before actually playing. But I do wonder if stuff like this could be used for the league to feel out and see if there's other teams that might be up to the competition level or might be able to generate enough interest for further expansion. Again, assuming that the Continental Football League is able to be successful enough to actually expand. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. So as a recap, each Continental Football League team will play all of their division rivals 2 times each season over the course of 6 weeks. At the end of those 6 weeks, the top 2 teams in each division will then play each other for the division championship playoff game, with the respective winners facing off against each other head-to-head in the Continental Football League Championship at the end of the season. What we're seeing right now is that teams are signing coaches and players, and it's been a lot of fun to see since many of these signings have been local talent. Like the Black Gold are signing coaches that played at Texas Tech, the San Antonio Toros are signing players from UTSA and even showing up at their pro day events. I do wonder how this will be for competition since it seems like the older teams or the teams that were announced to be joining the league earlier kind of have a head start and have had more time to prepare. Like, I'd feel bad if I was in the Arrows, Caps, or Braves ownership group since I need to quickly catch up to pull in the same talent pool that all these teams are pulling from. I don't think it'll be too big of a deal. I do think it seems like these teams are able to sign players pretty quickly, but it is something I think will be interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of these more established teams or teams that were announced earlier end up being the more competitive and the more better prepared ones, at least early on in the season. And also, with the signing of these players, the league is more or less locked into play this season now that they have stadium contracts and player contracts. This is something I said in my previous video that I was interested to see if they would push back play since they're really trying to get everything really rushed to get done for this summer. It seems like they have gotten a lot of these contracts underway. I do hope that they reveal an official rule book, especially as we get closer to the start of the season, but we'll just have to see. As, to back out now would cost them a lot of money and definitely would be a bad look. I know that other spring leagues have had issues when it comes to owners not having the funds to pay for facilities or player salaries. So fingers crossed, let's hope that for the players and the families of the players that the CoFL were wise in picking out owners that do have the capital and do have the funds in order to support this league throughout their first season. Another thing to know, as I was following this league as they were announcing teams, that the league said that if they weren't able to get to 8 teams like they're wanting to, that they had a plan and were committed to possibly playing with only 6 teams in the league. I do think a public show of commitment like this is good, but it does raise some questions about exactly how committed some of these ownership groups are, or maybe how much coaxing was needed. Or I understand that with a smaller budget, a league like this, its finances and support are obviously a big point of interest and a big issue. And I'm curious if behind the scenes, there's really a lot of work needed to get certain investors or owners on board, if they were on the fence enough for the CoFL to put out an official announcement like that. And also interesting thing to talk about is that some of the earlier teams, like we do have some reboots, we have some original teams like the Tall City Black Gold or the Texas Syndicate, which are all new to the league, and we had the Cincinnati Dukes, which were an established semi-pro team that were being elevated up to a hopeful professional league. So I do think it's interesting that the 3 newest teams are all universally reboots of classic CoFL teams for the 60s. I don't know if that's because there's investors that might just want a blank slate team that people can automatically attach an identity to rather than making a new identity. Again, I don't think it matters too much behind the scenes as long as owners are committed to supporting the teams and the players, but it is an interesting aspect that no doubt we'll learn more about as we approach the season, as we get into it. A lot of times stuff like this is talked about, so we'll be keeping our eyes open here for that kind of information. I know personally for me, it's been great seeing all the posts from some teams and their owners online. It's great to see teams like the Toros already getting some local sponsorships. This was a question I had earlier on about how sponsorships would go, and the teams have put out some statements talking about how sponsorships will work. According to the Toros, team sponsorships can be as little as $100. So for some of these smaller markets, it might be a great way to get your local business, to get its name out there in front of some fans, especially if they're able to get a pretty consistent following at these games. I don't know the specifics of how it works, like if it's a funding system like Patreon where you're just kind of like supporting them with like a lump payment at the beginning, or if you're doing like monthly installments, or it's just to support the league, or if there's going to be like signs set up for businesses, or even I think with like a high enough one, you might even see patches on the uniforms. I think no doubt this probably just boils down to a team by team decision, and it's also based by how much money you're using to sponsor the team. Like if it's $100, it might just be like a little thing, but if you're supplying like pretty big fund, I imagine that things get a little bit more substantial. Now with this league, league being a smaller budget league and all new summer league, I do really want it to be successful, especially with all of the startup leagues that we see in alternative football. There's been a lot of cases where they sell a vision that sounds really cool and some people really buy into, but ultimately they never get off the ground, or if they do make it to kickoff, sometimes things fall apart midway through. Because of that, I'm hopeful, but I'm still a little bit wary about this. I'm more hopeful now that the teams have all been named with owners and signings are underway. I think a big draw for a league like this is really going to be making a personal connection with fans in the market. So having a human touch can only really help. I think that's a big thing with alternative football in general, is that with it being more niche, you're able to really get in contact with the players. I know I've had players that like my tweets or will comment under stuff. It's a lot of fun to see. With this league being a little bit smaller in scale, I can only imagine that fans might have a more close personal connection with the players in their respective markets. I do really want the Continental Football League to succeed, as it would be a way for more players to get an opportunity to create game film that can vault them up to a higher level of play, like in the UFL, NFL, or CFL, and it gives them also a chance to make money playing a game that they are clearly passionate about if they're playing at these smaller levels. I would love to see this league grow, especially if it can elevate itself up to a higher level. I do know that league ownership is wanting to maintain that they are wanting to be supplemental to other football leagues rather than competition, which I think is good for the scale that they're looking at. But I think more than anything, if you're a fan of alternative football or spring football, you learn a lot about players and their stories and the drive that they have to compete, so you can't help but root for them. When looking at all of the teams after they've been revealed, this league has a good set of markets. It's definitely a mix of big cities and also smaller markets that might be dying for a professional football team of their own. At any level in alternative football, you'll of course have the discussion when it comes to NFL markets or non-NFL markets and the balance you have to try to hit when going to those. For something like this, it'd be fun to experiment with markets that don't have NFL teams or something that, that could really maximize support in a smaller scale football league. But I do think having big markets is good for broader appeal, and something I'll talk about in a little bit is that I really like that the Texas teams are based in big notable cities in Texas. Like you have Dallas and Fort Worth, San Antonio and Austin, which I think is great for bringing in fans. For this upcoming season, I'll be rooting for the Toros, especially after the relocation of the Brahmas. And I feel like if I was trying to get my friends to come to games, that playing against a team in Dallas or playing against a team that's based in Austin would get them a lot more excited to come with me to these games rather than playing a team based in LaGrange or Columbus. No offense to those cities, but those big notable cities can kind of give this league a bit of a larger scale feel that I think could be very beneficial. Of course, also when discussing that kind of balance between NFL and non-NFL markets, I think if Midland is going to be a very, very interesting market to look at, since I know that they love football out in West Texas and don't have a pro team, and given their massive stadium, or relatively massive stadium, it'd be really cool to see that team really explode and get a lot of support. We don't really know exactly what the ticket sales are going to be like for prices, but it would be cool to see a lot of support in some of these bigger markets. I think it's also important, just as a reminder, that the CoFL is going to be operating at a lower budget than other alternative football leagues, so I wouldn't expect to see something that's going to be on the same level or scale as the UFL in terms of production. I know this is primarily a UFL channel, so it's something that we might come to take for granted, but for whenever you're operating at a smaller level, things aren't going to be as complicated, they aren't going to be as complex, and I know that for some fans that might be a little bit of a turnoff, and also that stadium size is definitely going to be smaller than what you see in other alternative football leagues. For me, whenever I was reviewing the stadiums and their capacities, it reminded me a lot of what we've seen in Major League Rugby games, where they feature smaller crowds, a little bit less elaborate TV production, and a lot of local sponsors. I know I really enjoyed going to Houston SaberCats games. They were absolutely electric and fun. They had a really great environment, and having official beer sponsors and everything was amazing to have. I know I only ever went in the last season, RIP SaberCats, but with a seating capacity of 4,000 at the SaberCats Stadium, it never felt like it was that small. It always felt packed, highly energetic. It was a lot of fun. And I think if the Continental Football League can replicate an environment that's like that for their games, I could see this league being pretty successful as a smaller scale outdoor football league, as it would have unique rules and a smaller market focus and a little bit more of an intimate environment that would make it feel different than a traditional football environment. This is going to be obviously a very interesting league to follow, It's getting its feet underneath it, and we'll be keeping up to date with it here at the archive, so be sure to subscribe if you haven't. With all 8 teams now fully revealed and the schedule for their inaugural season set to officially kick off in late May, the Continental Football League appears ready to make their mark in the world of alternative football. Let me know which team you'll be rooting for this summer, and tell me in the comments your thoughts on this league. Be sure to subscribe for more videos covering everything in the alternative football space. With the UFL season right around the corner, we'll be publishing weekly videos all throughout the spring season, so be sure to follow so you don't miss a thing. And as always, thank you for watching.